Okay, I'm frequently asked by students to produce a model answer for questions about how the Nazis were able to take control of the churches in Germany. This is a fairly frequent question, and it's actually one that the textbooks don't really deal with very well, which is probably why students will often ask for help on this question. So here we are. I've written a model answer in a plan format for a typical question. I've selected the question from January 2011, which seemed to be fairly typical of the type of question that comes up. So as you can see, the question is, in what ways were the Nazis able to control the churches in Germany? Okay, so as always, just to remind you of the approach, the absolutely key thing is that you get across the message that's in the introduction, that you get the main points across, which are in those key paragraphs, and that you then conclude your answer. You've got 18 minutes because this is a 12 marker on this. So for those candidates who perhaps can't write as fast as others, remember the key thing is the main point in each of the paragraphs that are put across, that are listed for you there. Ideally, though, you need to expand on each of those main points with the information to the right. It is the precise detail that will push your grades up, pushing from a C to a B to an A to an A star. So depending on how fast you write, flesh out each of those points into full paragraphs using the information to the right there, and in particular using the information that is in bold. Okay, so let's zoom in on the question and just understand what it's about. It's asking how they were able to control. Okay, so the weaker answers would just simply write a description of what the Nazis did. The stronger answers will focus on the different methods of control, and so I've deliberately written this answer that ensures that the topic sentences of each paragraph focus on different methods. Okay, so what are the key points you want to put across? First of all, your introduction. Okay, as it says there, what you want to emphasise is Hitler publicly always claimed that he supported Christianity, but privately he despised Christians. Everything about Christianity he despised because Christians want to support the weak, support individual needs, whereas the Nazis believed that individual needs came second. Everything was about serving the nation, making Germany strong, and the Nazis, of course, promoted the ideals of ruthlessness as being virtues, as being strong personal characteristics. Point out in your introduction that it was a two-prong attack because there were two Christian churches in Germany, the Catholics and the Protestants. Okay, and that's and that's reflected in the plan that we have here. So in your first proper paragraph, you tackle the theme that basically Hitler was able to get the churches to self-control themselves. Certainly in the first year, he didn't really need to do that much in the first year. Why not? Because bottom line is, whether you were a Catholic or whether you were a Protestant, the churches were anti-communist. As a result, many clergymen, whether you were a priest, a Catholic priest or a Protestant pastor, they admired the way in which Hitler crushed communism and restored law and order in 1933. The Protestant church in particular was very nationalistic, a bit like our Church of England. It was the equivalent in Germany. It was the German National Church, and they admired Hitler's nationalism as well. You then move on from paragraph 2, that's paragraph 2, you move into paragraph 3, and you develop a point how Hitler was able to take advantage of the fact that the churches admired the Nazis to some extent, although they were very cautious in their support of the Nazis. Hitler was able to take advantage of that, in a sense, to trap both of them and to bring about a stronger Nazi control over religion. And within this paragraph, talk about the Catholics and Protestants separately. First of all, the Catholics. The absolutely key thing you've got to mention is the deal that Hitler signed with the Pope. It was called the Concordat. It was signed in July 1933, and the Pope was Pope Pius XI. And it was a two-way promise. Hitler promised that he would respect the privileges and freedoms of the Catholic Church, that the Nazis would not interfere in the Catholic Church, and in return the Pope promised that priests would stay out of politics. For the Protestants, Hitler took over the leadership of the Protestant Church. There were 28 regional Protestant churches, and what Hitler did is he centralised them all. He appointed Ludwig Müller, who was a Nazi clergyman, as Reich Bishop, and the Arian paragraph was introduced, which basically removed any pastors. Remember, a pastor is a Protestant priest, who were of Jewish descent, or even if they were married to Jews, they were basically sacked from their posts. The Nazi Protestant movement, they were called the German Christians, and they basically took over the leadership of the Protestant Church, and a single Reich Church, an imperial Protestant church, was created, led by Ludwig Müller. So that was the method they used to take control over the Protestant Church. Moving to your next paragraph, and what we're doing here is we're now talking about how in the longer term Hitler had no intention of keeping to his side of the bargain with the Catholics. Remember, in the Concordat, Hitler had promised that he would not interfere with the freedoms of the Catholics. Well, basically Hitler broke his side of the promise. So crucifixes, for example, were removed from church schools. Catholic youth groups, which Hitler had promised to allow to continue, basically were abolished, and all children were eventually forced to join the Hitler Youth. Now, the Pope, of course, had made a promise to stay out of politics, and on the whole, the Pope kept to his side of the promise. He did very famously publish a statement called "With Burning Anxiety" in 1937. But he was never prepared to take a strong line to call upon all Catholics to oppose Nazism, even during the war years, when evidence of the Nazi atrocities against the Jews were coming through. Some brave individual priests, such as Archbishop Galen, he was a Catholic, did speak out. He attacked Hitler's euthanasia policy, which did actually force Hitler to abandon that policy in 1941, but there was no united action by the Catholics against the Nazis. So on the whole, although the Catholics continued to exist, they didn't pose a problem for the Nazis. You then move into paragraph 5, which takes a similar line with the Protestants. Now, I've already done one podcast on the Protestants, so I won't go through all of this again, but basically the point is, remember, there was some serious resistance from the Protestants, led by Martin Niemöller. They formed a breakaway church called the Confessing Church, and more than 2,000 pastors joined it, but on the whole, Hitler was able to use his powers to remove that threat. Niemöller was arrested in 1937, sent to concentration camps, and many other pastors were arrested. The most famous other pastor, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, did join an active resistance movement. He was arrested and executed in April 1945. So that's the main body. Remember, it's an 18-answer one. There's quite a lot of detail there. The key thing is that you get those points across in the main topic sentences, the points that I've already highlighted, that I'm just boxing off there. Those are the key ones, and if you can expand on those with some detail, then that will obviously help, as long as you get those key points across. To conclude, you want to remember it's about methods of control, so really emphasise the fact they used a combination of methods. try to emphasise the fact that in the early months, the early years of the regime, Hitler was able to use the fact that Christians admired the Nazis for crushing communism and restoring law and order, and as a result he was able to get the churches to control themselves. But in the long run, in the long term, Hitler had no intention of giving the churches the independence they hoped to keep, and so using lies, arrest and violence, he did break his promises and remove the powers of the churches in Germany. Okay, hopefully that has given you the information you need for that common question, which, as I say, the textbooks don't give you that much information on, which is why many students have struggled with this particular question. Thank you.